Chris. Thank you, Chris. Well, as Chris said, search is pretty important. Now, I wish I could tell you we were up here to try to make it sexy with Rex. I don't think that's going to happen. But search is, as Chris pointed out, is in a lot of your plans. It's very important. I think because a lot of its buttons and levers are hidden to many of us, it seems complex. And Rex here is uniquely qualified to talk about search marketing because his background is he was one of the co-founders of a startup called Applied Semantics. So Applied Semantics actually helped create one of the first meaning-based search engines. So it was one of the first times, engine was called Oingo. So it was one of the first times where if you went to a search engine, Oingo, which also fed Alta Vista, I believe, and punched in Minneapolis Lakers, you weren't necessarily getting pictures of ice fishermen. So, and then from there, and I think that's going to be what we focus on here, Applied Semantics also developed the platform for AdSense, which, as many of you know, thanks to Google, has now become the de facto standard for search marketing that you're using. So, Rex, given your background, let's start with something fairly basic. Explain to us the difference between organic and paid placement.
Well, other than the obvious, one is paid and one's organic. But
thank you. Thank you, Eisenberg, for feeding me that question.
But I mean, organic is the results that you get on your organic searches, and paid is the things on the side that you pay for. But I think for a marketer, it's really looking at it from the position of how fast you want results and how much you're willing to pay for those. Okay. So I mean, organic takes a lot longer, but when it's up there, it has a lot of credibility because it means that it must be important, at least in Google's eyes or Yahoo or Microsoft. And the paid side of it is if you want to get the position next to that search result as quickly as possible. So it's, you use it in different types of contexts. Search is really good for seeding, something that's launching, something that you want to be in front of the eyes of people searching for that keyword, versus organic is something more, I think, for the long term, for things that, as things go on, you want people to remember, oh, when they search that term, that's the place to go to.
Okay. And on the paid side, we'll sure talk about pricing eventually. So, some of the best practices for getting top placement that you could share with us.
So for top placement, going back to the history, Google didn't actually create the category. It was a company called GoTo.com that became Overture, and then Yahoo bought it. And their premise was basically you pay a little more than the guy that was at the top, and then you're at the top position, right? So if you're bidding $1, the guy, if you want to be in the top position, bid $1 and a penny, and now you're in the top position. What Google changed in that was they changed the way that they calculate, because they were looking at it and saying, well, even if the guy bids $1 and a penny, if twice as many people click on the guy that bids $1, then they're making $2. They're only making $1 and a penny off of the first, or the guy that's trying to outbid that position. And to them, that is more important, and it probably is more important to the guy searching because obviously they're clicking more on that ad. So they use that as kind of the generic basis of their algorithm. But what that means in terms of marketers, and Google does this on purpose, they've kind of played into that auction game theory, type of thing where they know people want to bid and get to the top position. But the top position isn't always the best position, but most people think it is. Usually they use the first part of that equation to try and get the top position. So if it's $1 and let's say they bid $1 and a penny, right, they hope they get the position. But with Google, they kind of changed that algorithm around where the second part of that equation is click-through rate. And click-through rate is essentially how many people are clicking through as part of that equation. So if somebody, let's say an ad is getting a 5% click-through rate, he can bid $1 versus, so that might be the first position. If another marketer comes in and they get a 1% click-through rate, they basically have to bid $5 and a penny. And this is essentially how Google makes a lot of money and keeps my stock going up. Because of this gaming theory, most marketers will concentrate on the price part of the equation. And so the difference between position number 1 and position number 2 could be 5 times. On average, it sometimes is somewhere between 50% and 100% more, because usually the guy trying to bid at a top position is coming from a position where he's not as relevant, so he's paying for that price. And that's really where Google really capitalizes and makes a lot of extra revenue.
So it seems like people are trying to game Google, and that's how you described it to me earlier, but in a sense they're getting gamed by Google.
And that's essentially how they've been able to beat earnings, quarter after quarter, because there's always somebody there trying to bid more. And because they keep their market share in search, plus they bought YouTube, they cut a deal with MySpace. The key was really to get a lot of, to keep it in mind share and to keep people coming back.
What's your recommendation on so you basically said essentially going for top placement and bidding for that isn't necessarily the best way to maximize ROI. What is a better strategy for that?
Well, it's to concentrate on the click-through side of it. So like I was saying in the equation, if that first guy was getting 5% click-through, he's paying 1/5 the price as the guy who's getting 1% click-through. And that is really the better part of it to concentrate on. But it's also the harder part of the concentrate. It takes a lot more work, but it gets a lot better return. Because when it's specific, users also, if they're clicking more, the conversion rate is probably higher too. And if you're paying less and people are clicking more and people are converting more, then you're getting an exponential benefit in terms of users, and that converts to conversion, which basically equates to a higher return on investment.
Okay. What are some other key things to consider when you're using AdSense? Just because the back end of it is so hidden, kind of enlighten us as to what's going on. I mean, you've said quite a bit, but.
Well, I mean, so going into that specific, the specificness, has to do with, in general, it's keywords. I mean, a lot of marketers have come up to me, or people in general have asked me, well, what's the secret? What's the secret sauce of AdSense and AdWords? And there really isn't a secret sauce. It's just hard work, research, and being very specific. That's really where the basis of everything starts. And so I'll give you an example. If you go and you bid and you say, well, let's just bid on games or video games. Well, there's a lot of people bidding on that generic word. It's the most obvious word, and it's the word it's typing. And it's so general that when people are searching for video games, you don't even know what they're looking for. Are they looking for a Wii video game, a PS3 video game? Are they looking for a shooter video game? And so not only does it cost more because more people are bidding because it's the most obvious keyword, your conversion is a lot less because once they get there, it might not be exactly what they want. So really it's to concentrate on what I call a long tail of keywords, to be very specific in the keyword. And so instead of video game, it could be Wii fitness video game. It's going to be less specific. And also, or actually more specific, and also what it does is it really hones in. I mean, a guy typing in or girl typing in Wii fitness game is probably looking for a Wii fitness game, and if that's what you sell, it's going to convert. Whereas if you typed in even Wii game, and they were looking for a fitness game, and you sell a Zelda game or a shooter, it's not the game they want. And so you're not going to get the conversion, plus you're going to pay more. So it really works in step, and that's where you get the exponential gains. And using an example of you bid let's say you bid $1 for video games, right? With Wii fitness games, it might be less. It might be 10 or 20 cents because there's less people bidding on that, right? And once they get in, if your conversion rate is, let's say, 10% versus 1%, that's a 100-fold return on investment gain. And so that means either spending less or getting 100 times more customers that are qualified to buying your product. Not just people that are going to the site, but people that will convert from that action.
Shifting gears for a bit, is there a way, I should say, and if so, what are some ways to leverage a competitor or competitive product's buzz? It's getting a lot of PR, to leverage their buzz and work it into my search engine marketing.
Well, a lot of people do competitive, using a competitive keyword. So, let's say for Medal of Honor, you go after Modern Warfare, right? And that is, somewhat effective. The problem sometimes with competitive keyword targeting is that if somebody's typing in Modern Warfare and they get Medal of Honor, that really wasn't what they were searching for. So sometimes it can backfire as well. And so really it's understanding the customer and understanding, maybe if it's not better or a competitor, but it's, or it has it's in a different period, right? That might be something that will tie it in versus, we want you to buy this game versus that game.
You've given a few examples, but maybe just to go into a little bit more detail. What are some ways that games specifically as a product can harness SEM to maximize their marketing reach?
Well, I think that, as of all marketing, it's a part of a bigger equation, right? So, it isn't the only thing you do. At the same time, it's an integral part of an overall marketing campaign. Search engine, what does it drive to? What's the call to action, right? Is it driving, to a microsite? Is it driving to a contest that might, be able to grab, lead or data information? So it really is how it fits into the bigger equation of the marketing. But going back to the specificness, by clearly targeting the keywords and then also doing the same thing with the site or the contest and making sure that it's relevant, the key is it drives conversion, which is, I think, more important than just driving people to a site. Because if that site isn't relevant to that person, it doesn't matter how much or how little you spent, and it doesn't matter how many of those people came. It was basically a unfulfilled marketing dollar, right? And so the key is really to have a campaign that's tied specifically. And there are ways to be very specific in click-through rates. If we do campaigns, I can achieve a click-through rate of somewhere between 7 and 10%. And, but that is doing a lot of specific fine-tuning of the keywords, fine-tuning of the copywriting that's in the ad, and then also making sure that what we're driving them to is something that is going to convert. And I think that's all key into an effective search, both an organic and paid search campaign.
What about the duration of SEM campaigns? Is there a reason to maintain it much longer than the other marketing components for a product? And what are some benefits to doing that?
Well, the beauty of, at least when it relates to paid search and even organic search, is that there are customers that will come to a game 6 months after. So it's one of the only types of marketing that can linger because you're only paying for performance. So whereas you run a TV ad or a print ad or even an online campaign, and it runs for, let's say, that month, and then it's over, and then after that, your sales, drop and et cetera. With search, somebody searching for a game 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, even 3 years out, if it's a game that they want and it's relevant, then it will click. And on the paid side, because it's performance-based, you're only really paying for the person who's coming in. So you can leave it up there. And I've seen some very effective campaigns where they've used the paid search as part of more of a campaign to get an image or brand out there. But the old adage of marketing 101 is frequency, right? Advertising is about people seeing it. I think the number is 20 times, right, that people have to see a brand to recognize it, remember it. And because of that, sometimes it's not necessarily trying to get a click-through. It's just trying to keep the mind share out there.
The wall between video game marketers and consumers has crumbled.